That stopped and started the clip. Look at that. All right, so here we go. Control Shift 2 is going to bring up this panel over here. The views will allow you to change it. It probably looks different. I like the 4, and I like seeing all 4 things: the Luma, the vector scope, RGB parade, and then RGB overlay parade. The main thing is this parade. I like, 80% of the time I'm here. And then other than that, if I'm having trouble with color correction, I look at this overlay and I'm like, okay, so all the blues are in the highlights, all the reds are in the shadows, and then I got these guys here. So if you're really trying to find white and color correct, you're really just trying to put all these guys into this little bevel coming out. So I look at that and just the extremes of the parade for color. And then of course the vector scope is going to be your saturation and also where everything's pointing in general. But the vector scope won't do a great job if you're spot correcting the colors. The overlay will be better for spot correction. But if you're just trying to get an overall balance, the vector scope's going to get you that good first layer white balance. Other than that, I figured this out not too long ago, but if you don't know, this little line here is for skin tone. It doesn't matter what race or anything, but everything is going to be in around this line if you're trying to match up skin tone, from white, Asian, black, anything in between. This line is going to be your guider for getting the skin tone. So other than that, here is how I color correct. The first one is all about just getting everything within the boundaries. So boundaries, I'm thinking, you got this, you have the peak here, and sometimes I just push it to see, okay, what is the peak? Well, in this case, I believe the peak is going to be your tower. A little bit of the sand is actually going to be all this guy. So the tower and the cloud here is going to be this guy right here. So we're not going to blow them out of the water, but I'm just trying to identify what everything is. I'll go right at 100-ish. It doesn't really have to be exact. And then the bottom is pretty heavy. I'm looking at this heavy-ass line right here. And so we're just going to bring it up to this 15 mark, maybe a little underneath this 15 mark. I put that there. That's kind of my 0, at least for this first grade. And then I typically will push it down back with the midtones. So, the numbers will change, but this is basically almost always just, I guess, how I shoot. My first color correction in the exposures is always going to be up on the shadows, down on the midtones, up on the highlights. And that's just setting us up for this flat look now. I don't like the final to be flat, but this gives us the ability to now really go and push in and pinch out colors that we want. Typically I'm a whore for saturation, but just don't go, crazy and get all this purplishness going on and you can start getting pixelation. So, 50 or so, just to kind of really start pushing the colors in the direction that we want to go. But at the end of the day, we're going to knock them out individually. So I would say the second color correction is going to be, in a case like this, I know I'm going to pop this water. So we're going to do something like this. Always feel free to go less and add it to the softener here versus going wide with the tool and staying low on the soft. So that's just over the time. I just felt like that helps more, and that I'm gonna get more of this darker color. Yeah, like that, and then go in. So I feel like that's a good mask. And then on top of it, if I'll show you with the clouds, so never mind. Okay, so for here, so now we're seeing that it's this guy here. I'm looking at the parade, just kind of seeing where the water is, what's identifying the water. So I'm gonna go up. Shadows are gonna really crank down, and midtones are really gonna crank down, and that's gonna get us a little bit more contrast in this water. We're gonna get some ups on the saturation, and the main dish of it all is going to be this color grade as far as, okay. So we got that. All right, so that liking that. Next one's gonna be the clouds. What I sometimes will do with these clouds, because other things will have this color. I'm gonna go, so do you see how it's darker up here and it's lighter down here just because of the atmosphere? So I'm gonna pull from the middle here and get a good in between. And then from that in between, I'm gonna ramp it up. So you see how it's on the side of the boat here, it's a little bit in this water and everything like that. Well, I just want this third layer, or whatever layer it is to you, to just be the clouds. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a shape to the color, and now we have boom, boom. All right, so now we have a clip that we said we want this color, but we only want it in this area. And that's gonna help us keep the color mats and everything very clean and not having to bleed over so much. So here we go. So here is where we were, and we're gonna really ramp up this. We're gonna ramp it down. Okay, add a little saturation, but really it's all gonna come from these guys. So what you can think about for this is, obviously it's a sky, so it's gonna be the highlights, but a lot of the times on the back side of these clouds, depending on the day, you're gonna get a shadow. So it's gonna come from like a darker blue to purple hue. So just to kind of get rid of that shadow feel, I'm probably just gonna make it a little bit, it's gonna make the sky a little on the greenier side because we're getting rid of purple, which is the opposite, but that's just gonna help us keep it fluff. And you know, when you start really messing with stuff, I also will move the clip and see how the pixelation's working. I kind of like it. I might actually just grab a little bit more to try to help the pixelation. I'll bring him down just a tad. Okay. All right, so now we have, at least in my opinion, the two main things, which would be well, I always like to have this base layer, regardless if it looks perfect or not, because once we're done with everything, if we have to go back and make minor adjustments, this turns into our minor adjustment panel. So now we have the water, now we have the sky, and now for what I would consider, I don't know, maybe like this like focus layer. And that, all I mean is we're gonna do some kind of like custom vignette to the subject, AKA in this case, the boat. We're gonna get a nice big old feather going on. And we are going to make this boat pop. So because we're already at the peak of the highlights, I'm gonna give it just a little bit more, but the main thing is gonna come from the shadows, and we're gonna get that boat down to that 0 mark. Get that black band here looking really sharp. Okay, so the inside of the layer is going to be more of an adjustment to the subject, in this case the boat, but in reality the magic comes from the outside. So I typically pump it up just to get that contrast, and then we're gonna bring it in. Okay, and then last layer here, just because it's like a little just really dark, and I think that's because we popped that so much. Again, so I'm really just doing it for the tree line, and everything over here is just really dark, and it's affecting the boat glass. So I'm just gonna go do this. Shoom. And just do that. Bring it back a tad. And there we go. Now we got our layer here. Pop it. A lot of the time I like bleeding it all the way, and that just helps with the pixelation, and it just kind of makes sure that nothing stupid happens that just looks like a mistake. All right, so I don't know if this looks better to you or not, but that's kind of what I like, is seeing something like this go down. Cool. And the last thing would be for that subject layer that we were talking about, number 4 here, which is this guy. I might bring him in actually. Yeah, like the boat's kind of weird because it's got this like different shape, but like people, you kind of want it to just, the feather just to be on the outside of the person or subject. Okay, take that off. And then the last thing here is to just make sure that the mask is following it pretty well. So there's your key mark, and we're gonna play. Still on it. Okay, so we're on it the whole way, so guess what? We're not even gonna mess with it. I recommend if we were to move it to not make as many marks as possible. When you start making a lot of them, it starts getting really jittery. So just try to make big camera motion adjustments. So if we were to really turn, then make a point, find where that turn ends, and then make that other point, and just try to make as minimal amount of key points as possible, and that will try to hide the illusion of what we're doing a little bit better. All right, so something like this, same kind of situation at the front. Ideally, we're not going to make nearly as many layers. Something like that's a lot, and I only really would like to see that on the intro clips and just very money clips that must be seen or people will want to see before they leave the video. So from there, I'm seeing the blue, some of the dark blues here, so I'm going to just bring a little bit of green or just a black back in that, in the salon windows, and then that, but nothing too crazy. It's just an adjustment layer. We're just trying to keep everything in the ballpark. And then for this guy, okay, we got this big old spotlight that happens to be a sun in this case. It could be a light, it could be a production light, it could be a house light, it doesn't really matter. But when we have this gradient of light, we're just gonna counter the light. So typically it's gonna come from your mids, and it's gonna come from your dark shadows to bring that back. Because we want it to still be bright. We want it to still have that white feel, but we want to bring back a lot of this other details in the rails and everything else. So when you do that, you got, again, a little bit more of this blue hue that's bleeding through just from the nature of it all. There. Okay, so that's just the layer inside. So now we got the outside layer. So now we got this layer, if you look over here at the parade, now we got this hump here that's coming right from the light, which is great. But now on the outside, we're just gonna match it. We're gonna meet it back up. Not all the way, but we're just gonna make it a little bit more intentional of what's going on. Okay, we don't wanna get it too black. Okay, a little extra blue. And just like that, that's gonna basically do it right there. I think 2 layers is fine. So in most cases, that's all I want to see, and I think that's just like going to get you the most bang for your buck, for your time, and for the value. We're going to have your overall base layer just to kind of stretch and make the contrast start, and then just one extra layer. Find the gap. Where's the highlights? Where's the crunch shadows? And we're just going to bleed it out. We're just going to try to neutralize it and even it all out. And that should really help and make the camera and the quality of the picture look very HDR, high dynamic range style. Cool. Alrighty, for something like this, good luck. This is where we'll probably have to motion track a little. So I'll show you the motion tracking so we have it on this video. Boom, boom, boom. Now it starts getting into just a rhythm. Feel free to lean into the rhythm. You know, you want to be creative, but you also want to be efficient. All right. So in this instance, I think it's just worth doing the 2 layers. So let's just do 2 layers and see how it goes. It actually might backfire, so let's just figure that out. this layer like that going. And this other layer we're going to just use to pop everything. And I'm also going to use it, I want a little bit more green, so I'm going to negative the purple, or I can just go over here to the green and pump the green up. I like using the board because it allows you to just, oh no, I'm just visual, so it allows you to do that. I would rather, for water, I would recommend doing your shadows, because if you do your highlights, anything that's bleeding over on the outside, especially like the beach and everything, will really pull, where in this case, it's gonna stay more in the water if we just use highlights. Okay, that's making this guy look obvious. Okay, so we're just gonna bring him back a little bit. All right, and then I'm probably actually just gonna go on the opposite side here to make sure those beaches don't get too yellowy green looking. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna make sure we're at the very front of the clip, or it's gonna mess everything up. Oops. All right, so keyframe it. So we're gonna go all the way to this. Okay, so we're starting to lean forward. We're just gonna move him forward. Don't want to move try not to move the mask shape as much as possible. You got to like redo the mask and then start doing the key points, but moving the mask is really going to give away. Boom, boom. All right, so since this is the jump, boom, 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 I'm gonna boom. I'm actually going to keyframe the top right here. So we're actually going to keyframe the color and the exposure now. I'm going to go here. So now we have our set. We're going to change. We're going to bring, go back to the inner. We're going to bring him in just a tad. Bring him back into exposure. Cool. And then last thing, I'll probably just add a white layer. It's gonna hit this white and then the beach. And we're just gonna bring it down, bring it down, bring it down, just a tad. And that way, when we make our way around to this guy, he's not just completely blown out of the water. Okay, that's a little detail back, not much, but. Okay, and that mask, I can see it. I can clearly see it. I know we're seeing it more because we know it's there, but yeah, it's just way too much. I'm gonna like do something like that. And then inside the mask as well, I'm gonna try to give it that little bit of green that we were doing on the other guy. Trying to just kind of follow the same color. Okay, see, that's kind of, I don't really like that. So I'm going to use the key frames now to come back here. And we're just going to, I'm using the reference of the tower. I'm putting it right underneath the top of the tower. Try to keep it as consistent as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that'll just help hide that now that we're moving it. See how it's like, meh, meh, meh. Okay, so putting it back on there, into the tower, into the tower. Okay, and then from here is where we're gonna have to expand. Okay, let's see if that's better. Okay, so possibly another way to do this will be to grab the color itself. Because I'm really just trying to get the boat to not be so bright. So I think that might just help. I probably should have just done that instead of messing with it. Now it's not in the water at all. Boom. There's our shot. So possibly, I would say we're gonna do the sky here. Just because that's gonna really bring the daylight back into the shot. And then see how you got this purple hue. As you get farther away from things, obviously it's gonna have that hue. So we're just gonna like try to play with it a little here, and then we're gonna give the clouds their color with the highlights, and then we're gonna try to get rid of the distortion, the atmosphere, by drowning out the darks. Cool. Bring it down a little, bring it over a little, get a little less blue. Okay. Yeah, like it takes the purple out. You see the purple now that we're switching through. So we're just trying to make it light and bright like that. And then, so unfortunately, we're gonna have to do the same thing for this guy. These kind of swooshes will definitely cause a little bit more time in the editing. So if you got a lot of time, feel free to knock this kind of edit out. If not, just be conscious of it. Okay, so we're gonna put him right on the beach line is what I'm gonna follow for this, because we've kind of done a little bit of correction for that. But I'm gonna go above the beach line and then let it fade. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna fade it on the beach line. It's not so strong. All right. And then also, when you throw a mask in here, it's going to be completely flat, but my horizon isn't. So if it comes very off, definitely correct it. But, you know, always correct the horizon line. But if it's within a degree, it's not that big of a deal. But just always look at the horizon as well. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then sometimes too with the outside of, we get to play with that color a little bit now. Yep, okay, perfect. I love that. So I'm always looking for this very light blue to not green, but you're getting into that pigment. Okay, and then last thing, of course, is going to be keyframing it. Okay, so we're going to keep it on. Gonna hold it, gonna hold it, gonna hold it, gonna hold it. All right, well, we're not even going to move it. I might change the rotation. So we're going to go, boom, keyframe it. If you're gonna make I try to hide any keyframing inside that speed ramp, so when we get to it, it's there. It's hidden in the motion of the swoosh. Okay, and then in general now we got just very brightness, so we're just gonna taper her down just man, what to do. When we're going past something like that, the stabilizer will sometimes really fuck around, so just watch for that. There we go. All right, so we're gonna bring them all in, pop them all up. All right, so here's a good different shot now. So you see how it's darker and bluer over here because the sun's coming from this side? So that's going to be what I use to make my second layer mask and what we're going to kind of be combating. So in general here, I don't want to do too much color change at the moment, just because I'm going to make it a little just on the yellow side for everyone. But we're gonna take care of this whole clip with layer 2. We're gonna go over here. Oops. Bring him all the way up. And definitely take a second and try, this is more of a square. If it was a circle, I'd do a circle. But, do your best to use logic. So we're up, now we're up, now we're down. And get rid of that turquoise that I'm seeing. On this other side, we're gonna bring it down, and then I'm gonna bring him over to kind of help that transition. So you see how it feels like the spotlight was over here to the left, and now the spotlight is more here on the bench and everything, which is where the eyes should be. So boom, boom. I actually kind of did a little too much. It's kind of now really pushing back the other direction. I'm gonna pop him up. And then, so just to help with this weird undertone, I'm just gonna grab these guys. And it's kind of like this salmon yellow. Just get a little out of that weird orangish, just to kind of make it look white and clean. See? So feel free to spot color. Like sometimes it's better to just either reduce one color or remove a color than try to color correct the whole clip. All right, but that's kind of the gist. I think that's about all it'll be. Let's see if there's an inside clip. Yeah, same thing. It's just going to be the same thing. Like, we go down, bring this guy's up. We'll probably bring him up a lot on the inside just to really get some visuals going, and then we're going to bring him down for the contrast on the TVs. Worst case, if it's in a darker situation, I will sometimes just color correct the TV. Get like the blacks and just color correct the blacks, crunch the blacks in. We don't want the whole salon in this case to be dark, but it wouldn't be bad to have what's supposed to be dark, and what's supposed to be bright. All about extending the HDR. All right, then we'll go one more on the windows. Try to get a lot of that blue without getting much of the inside. Use that. Gonna do this, and then let's see how that works. I'm gonna bring them all in too. Cool. Doing that, and then for some reason, I don't really know what it is to really explain it, but I feel like when you brighten any roof, house, boat, whatever, I don't know, it feels like everything just gets brighter when the roof's brighter. Maybe not. Okay. Cool. Gets that little bit of magenta out of there too. All right, so dude, that's about it. If I really want to get crazy, I'd probably spot this and spot this differently, just because this side is where the sun's coming from. But again, if the shot needs it, take your time and really hit everything individually. If it kind of falls in line, kind of like this clip wasn't too bad. If it works, it works. Use one, two. I use at least two, 2 or 3 layers. And when it gets a little crazy and you're really just trying to put a little finesse on it, when it's blown out like that, you can just bring back it in the highlight and just kind of make it a fake blown out blue. Now just watch where that light is. So for instance, here now we're gonna have to do this number. And then just always double check and make sure it works. Okay, and then you gotta bring him. He needs to not mess up your timeline. I'll option drag, click drag, bring him up. We'll just because it had that wiggle at the end. So instead of trying to mess up this whole timeline a little bit, I'd rather just bring them up, get the right one, and then slide them back in. And then option G, as in group, will combine clips, audio clips, whatever it may be. All right, I got to, sorry about that.